Hey G fans, gojifan93 here, and welcome to my full spoiler review of Godzilla 2014. If you haven't seen the film yet, do not watch this video. Go and watch my non-spoiler review that I've already done. Alright, so first, I have seen the film now 3 times. I saw it on May 15th, an early showing, and then I saw it on May 16th in 3D, just to give the 3D a try, and then I saw it yesterday with my friends, and that would be the last and probably the final time that I'll see it in theaters, because I think 3 times is enough. I mean, unless I get an urge to want to see it again, which I might, because I really did enjoy this film. So yeah, first off, just, you know, when I first saw it, I was extremely, like, just nerdgasming out. You know, I had my Godzilla beer goggles on. I was completely just like in awe of the whole movie. And when I did my non-spoiler review, that was right after I saw it for the first time, so I was very excited and like very animated about it. And then when I saw it the second time in 3D, the film got better for me, obviously seeing it a second time, but seeing it in 3D though, it wasn't really, the 3D wasn't anything special. I didn't really care for the 3D, which I kind of knew that going in there. I mean, it was kind of just an excuse to watch it again, but just to kind of see what it might look like in 3D, because I know Gareth Edwards said, you know, oh, this is a movie to see in 3D, but it's still a gimmick to me. Now, seeing it a third time, I've obviously calmed down a little bit. The, you know, Godzilla beer goggles have come off, and I'm, you know, looking at this film from a very critical point of view. Not so much of a Godzilla fan point of view, but as just a moviegoer point of view. And I have little nitpicks that, you know, have started to arise in my mind, and things that in the film that I do kind of wish they would have changed a little bit. So the story of the movie basically follows Ford Brody, which is Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, on basically his whole, you know, experience on all the events that happen in the film. And the opening credit scenes are really cool. I really liked it. Now, I don't want to bring back old wounds, but comparing it, and I might do a little bit of comparisons between 1998 and this film, because it's just bound to happen. But the opening credits to both films, they're kind of similar, because they both show, you know, a nuclear bomb going off and a, you know, like army stuff going on and whatever. But the thing that makes this one better, obviously, is that it's more detailed. You get a better understanding of what's going on. And if you read the comic book, Godzilla Awakening, this whole credit sequence is basically what is basically in a nutshell of what that comic book said, which I think is really awesome. And I'm really glad I read the comic book first, because when that opening credits popped up, I knew exactly what was going on. So basically it was, you know, the military saying, okay, well, there's Godzilla, let's shoot a nuke at him and, you know, kill also the other Muto that was there. I don't remember the name of the Muto that was in the Godzilla Awakening comic book, but that's basically it. So then it kind of cuts to the scene where we see Dr. Serizawa and his assistant in a helicopter, and they're going down into like a sort of like a mining facility or factory or whatever. And they're going into the caves, and they find this huge skeleton that's in there. And at first, a lot of us thought that it was Godzilla, like, or it was some other Godzilla character, or like the bones of the original Godzilla. But the bones were way too long to have it be Godzilla. And so but what they end up finding is they find 2 little like eggs or some kind of like I don't really know what to call them. But one was closed, but the other one seemed to be open. And that makes sense, because what opened there, I believe, if I can remember this correctly, it was the female Muto that came out of that one egg, and it traveled all the way down into the nuclear facility, where then we see Bryan Cranston's character in his home with his wife and his kid, which, you know, Ford's there, obviously, as a younger kid. And he's talking about that he's noticed, you know, a fluctuation in you know, tremors and all this stuff, and he's saying that this is not natural, that there's a pattern to this, and something's going on, and, you know, I might have to shut down the reactors, and you know, and so he's trying to convince them that something else is happening, that this isn't a natural occurrence. So they go into they go to work basically in the factory and the nuclear facility, and his wife goes down to check out something. They never really explain what she's exactly doing. She just kind of goes in there. They put the gas mask on or whatever. And so there's some dialogue, and then all of a sudden it starts to shake, and like, you know, and at this point, I think a lot of people thought that this was Godzilla, that, you know, Godzilla was attacking the facility, but it's actually the Muto creature, feeding on the nuclear radioactivity, or the nuclear reactor, basically. And that's what makes it go haywire, and sadly, you know, long story short, Bryan Cranston's wife dies, and I have to say, the scene where where, you know, the smoke or whatever is just coming right at him, and the way he screams, I mean, he's just like, ah, and just shuts the door, and like the emotion he put into that part, and it was sad. I mean, it was, like, we all knew this was kind of going to happen because they showed this part in the trailer, so we knew that his wife was going to die. But when you see that, it's still very sad. I mean, he's like all crying on the wall, and then all of a sudden he hears like knocks on the door that he just closed, and he looks behind him, and he just sees the people that are dying inside that hallway, and his wife comes up. She takes off the helmet, you know, because she knows she's going to die anyways. And she tells him to take care of Ford and all that, and he's like, yeah. And I mean, it's just, they're all crying and stuff, but it gets cut off shortly because there's more rumbling, so everyone's evacuated, and the whole facility just crumbles. And then there's a scene to where we go to a classroom where Ford is in, and there's a little Easter egg here too, if you notice, that behind the teacher on the wall, there was a butterfly. There's like a bunch of butterflies here, and one of them has the design, sort of a similar design of Mothra, so there's a little nod to that. But what happens is Ford looks out into the distance, and he sees the whole factory and just crumble down. Smoke is everywhere and all that. And then it skips to 15 years later, to present time, where Ford is now a husband, a father, and he's in the military. And so he basically goes home after some kind of mission. They don't really explain what he was doing, but he ends up being able to go home. It's his birthday, or yeah, it's his, I think, or yeah, no, it's not his birthday. It's just a welcome home celebration. And I like this scene here because, you know, in this movie, we don't get many scenes of calmness and happiness, I guess. So it's nice to see, and it's also a good character development scene where we get to see Ford and his wife, Ellie, played by Elizabeth Olsen, and they do their, they talk and stuff like that. And, you know, a lot of people, and here's what I want to talk about Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, and also Elizabeth Olsen, that a lot of people did not like Aaron Taylor Johnson's acting, and they sort of liked Elizabeth Olsen, but for me, I liked them both, actually. I think Aaron Taylor Johnson did a great job because when I look at his character, you know, he's a tired military character. He's not going to be the most expressive person. And he's been through a lot. His mother died. His dad's a lunatic, or he thinks that his dad's a crazy lunatic person. And, you know, it kind of affects him to where I can just see him as just a tired character. So I liked him. I liked Ford Brody. I liked the character, and it was I liked to follow him throughout his adventure in this movie. But anyways, so it gets cut short with his celebration with his wife because they were about to make some whoopee, but then they get a phone call and his wife says that your father has now been arrested in Japan. So they have to fly all the way down to Japan and Ford goes. She has to stay because she's a nurse, but he goes down to Japan, and I like how basically the first half of the film takes place in Japan, and this is where that whole this controversy about that it's a whitewash cast and doesn't have a lot of other race or whatever. It's just complete horseshit. Okay, these are a bunch of people who are offended by the smallest of things in films. But the first half takes place in Japan, and I think it's really great. So anyway, so he goes, finds out that his dad is still trying to figure out what happened there, and he knows that something else has happened, and he needs to go to his house that's now in a quarantine zone so he can get his discs, because in those discs they have some proof on there to help him explain that this wasn't a natural disaster. So he ends up going, and in the quarantine zone, and they're walking in the quarantine zone, and all of a sudden Brian just looks at like his little, I guess, radiation radar thing. It's like says how much radiation is in a place, and he looks at it and it's at 0. It seems like there's no radiation. And he looks at Ford, and I love that where Ford's just like, Dad, what are you doing? And he just goes and takes off his mask, and Aaron's just like, oh my God, what are you doing? Dad, what are you taking off your mask? And he's just, huh, it's not radiated here. they lied and stuff like that. So, but they end up getting caught by the police, and they end up going all the way to the facility where they are holding the Muto creature. And this whole scene is very suspenseful, because not only do you have this gigantic, it kind of looks like a mushroom, it's like a weird alien looking mushroom thing, and it keeps on sending out EMP pulses, and it keeps on disrupting everyone, and they're trying to figure out, okay, well, we're getting more, like, it's becoming more rapid and everything like that. And then they interrogate Joe into explaining, like, why did you go into the quarantine zone? He's explaining that this is not a natural disaster. Basically, this was in the trailer, and it's the awesome line, you know, my wife died in there, and it's just amazing acting. I mean, this scene right here, Bryan Cranston just knocked it out of the park with this scene. His acting was phenomenal in this part. Very emotion, and just, it was awesome. So yeah, and then all of a sudden the EMP gets worse, and they start to realize that this thing's out of control, so they try to kill it, which, of course, you know, that's what humans do. We always just try to kill something we don't understand it. And the whole thing all of a sudden hatches where Muto comes out, and all hell breaks loose. The Muto comes out, everyone's getting stomped on, buildings are flying everywhere, they're trying to kill it, but it just doesn't work, so people are just running away. And long story short with this is that Bryan Cranston's character dies at this moment, and to a lot of people it seemed very quick. Like, one concern that I've heard from a lot of people, from critics and also, is that Bryan Cranston's character died way too quickly. For me, I was fine with it, actually, because I felt that the movie overall was very fluid. It kept it going. The movie didn't stop for a lot of things. Like, it was a very fluid, fast-paced film, and I think that's where its strength was. And the fact that they didn't, you know, hold on to this character for a super long time is all right with me, because the movie's not about Joe Brody. It's about Aaron Taylor Johnson's character. So he just set up the film for the groundwork, and he dies, and and then after, you know, they figure out, you know, they try to get his body up from the rubble after all the chaos is done, and, you know, he ends up dying in a helicopter, and Aaron Taylor Johnson's looking at him, he's like, no, Dad, don't go, and stuff like that. A lot of people criticize that he didn't cry a lot, or that he didn't, you know, do it. Well, I don't want to see, you know, I don't need a bunch of crying in a film like this, okay? Like, there's too many films out there that overdo death scenes, okay? And I feel that this was realistic, and I feel that Aaron Taylor, I mean, you know, you saw at the end of the clip that Aaron, like, he sat back and he started rubbing his hair like this, and he was freaking out. You never know, maybe he was all of a sudden starting to break down, you know? So anyways, after all that, the military starts freaking out. They're like, oh my god, the Muto creature's now going somewhere. And I'm not gonna go through every little scene. I was just like the beginning, but then Aaron Taylor Johnson goes to Dr. Serizawa, and he explains to him Godzilla, or who Godzilla is, and they explain that, you know, we were trying to study him, the Monarch Project, and all that stuff, and Aaron Taylor Johnson was kind of annoyed, because he's like, you guys knew all this shit, and yet, you know, you guys didn't try to kill it. And what's interesting is that the Muto creature, like, it was that thing's fault that the whole nuclear facility, you know, went haywire. And then they go back to when they were in the tunnel, and they were saying, like, that open egg or whatever that went on into their facility there and destroyed it. Now, after they do that, they figure out what Godzilla is, and the Dr. Serizawa, I love how his character, he basically makes Godzilla sound like a good guy, and he definitely pushes the notion that, you know, he's the balance of power, and that Godzilla will go and take on the Mutos and save us. But really, Godzilla doesn't give a shit about saving humanity or anything like that. He's just out to get the Mutos, and that's it. That's all he's out there to do. So yeah, but we, you know, a couple more scenes happen, and then we get to the first appearance of Godzilla in Hawaii, and we saw this scene in the extended trailer, and so I don't really have to go over what we saw there, but it's just awesome. I mean, the effects, the suspense that it takes up, and when we were in the theater, and when Godzilla was finally shown, when the camera was panning up and it showed Godzilla, some people in the theater clapped, and I think that was really awesome. And then all of a sudden, right when Godzilla, you know, does his roar towards the Muto, all of a sudden it cuts and it cuts to another scene where it's Ellie's, or Elle, I think they call him Elle, but I don't know, Elizabeth Olsen's character, and they go to her kid, and he's just kind of watching the news, and on the news, you see Godzilla fighting Muto for the first time. And this is where a lot of people have their problems, and I'll talk about that after I just kind of finish up the story here. So after that, they all of a sudden figure out that there's there's a female Muto going around, and she attacks Las Vegas. And so then they realize, okay, these guys are attacked by nuclear radiation, all three of them. So what we're going to do is we are going to do the smartest thing by making another bigger nuke, and we're going to put it as a decoy in the water and blow them up. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm going, oh my god, this is exactly what like 1984 was, when they thought that they could kill Godzilla with a nuke and stuff. I'm thinking, why would you send out another fucking nuke to take out these monsters when they feed and get more powerful by radiation? I don't understand why they thought that was a good idea. And there's a really powerful scene in this movie where Dr. Serizawa goes up to the general guy, I don't remember his name, and he says this, and he gives him, or he shows him this watch, and it was his father's watch, which was the Dr. Serizawa. I believe it was the Dr. Serizawa from 1954. And he says that this was his, father's watch, and that on this date, and blah, 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 and then all of a sudden the general went, oh, Hiroshima. And all of a sudden there was no dialogue, and he just looks at him, and he walks away. And like that scene right there is so powerful on its own, because basically what Dr. Serizawa was saying is that you guys have not learned a single thing. That by using this, you're going to kill so many more people. I mean, do you guys not remember Hiroshima and Nagasaki? So I love that scene, how he did that. At first, I didn't really understand what that meant, like why he showed him the watch and why he said the date and, oh, Hiroshima. But now I get it, and it was really cool when it clicks. So yeah, and then we move on. I'm just gonna fast forward a little bit. We get to the Golden Gate Bridge scene, and this is where Godzilla like does his really big like main appearance, where he starts in the water and then he comes out, and then the military's just, this is the classic scene, the military trying to attack Godzilla, and he's and Godzilla really doesn't attack back actually, which is really weird. He actually kind of just turns around and walks the other way, which is really interesting. But this leads into the final confrontation between Godzilla and the two Mutos. And also this is where, and it's weird because there's the train scene where the trains are holding the warheads, and they're going through the tunnels, and Aaron Taylor Johnson's character says, well, I need to get on that train so I can get to my family, and he finds a way to talk to the general to do that. And they go into the tunnel, and all of a sudden the female Muto's there, and she fucks up everything. I mean, the whole train, she breaks the bridge down, and the train falls in the water and all that. They end up rescuing Ford after all that. I'm trying to remember, I'm trying to do this as best I can off the top of my head. Yeah, and what they do is, for some reason, the nuke all of a sudden becomes irrelevant or something like that. Like they have to disarm it because I don't know. It's weird. They have like two backup plans. They say, well, we can't. I don't know. It's really weird how it kind of went by really quickly. Like they had this like room where they were talking about what they were going to do, and this is where they're talking about the Halo jump, which is the most probably the famous thing in the main trailer that they showed, and they say that we either going to have to put it on a boat and send it off into sea so that it'll detonate there or whatever, because for some reason they can't disarm the bomb. I don't know. It gets kind of convoluted here. Someone else maybe can explain it better than I can. So then we get that awesome Halo drop scene where they, Aaron Taylor Johnson, they're all, and you have the what is it, 2001 Odyssey music that was going on, the choir and it's really eerie sounding, and they fall. And what's cool is that we actually get some new scenes, like this wasn't in the trailer and stuff, but like while they're falling, you actually see Godzilla fighting the Muto, and then Godzilla turns around and they get really close to Godzilla. It's really crazy. And this is the part in the movie that is the final battle between Godzilla and Muto, and this is where it becomes the traditional final battle of a Godzilla movie, where it cuts to some monster fighting, then it cuts to some human drama, then it cuts back to monster fighting, then it cuts to human drama. And I know a lot of people get annoyed with that, but that's how a Godzilla movie works, and I think it worked perfectly here. So they go and they try to disarm the bomb. They find out that the female Muto has dug a hole to lay her nest, or to lay her eggs, not her nest, to make a nest to lay her eggs, and they figure out that they can't open the nuke, so they have to take it onto the boat to send it out into sea. And then they all leave, but then Aaron Taylor Johnson, he looks back and he sees all the eggs and they're like, you know what, we need to take these things out. So he goes, puts some gas, and then it just blows up the whole nest. Once it blows up the whole nest, before this, Godzilla was also getting his ass owned, by the way, by the two Mutos. And something that I really liked with this battle is that when Godzilla's getting pounded by both Mutos, you kind of notice that when the male Muto jumps up and lands on Godzilla, you can hear Mothra's roar. I kid you not. There was like a little bit of a arrow, and like, I can't do her roar that well, but she does like a little bit of a roar, and it's like, oh, that was awesome. I love that. That was like some cool fan service there. And also when he blows up the nest, you can kind of see that like the camera pans up and there's like this weird dragon looking head that's in the water, and it reminded me of King Ghidorah right away. But then I kind of looked at it, and then I saw ETN's review of this movie, and he said that it reminded him of Manda, and I thought that was pretty interesting as well. So I was like, oh, okay, so it could be like it could be either or, I guess, however you interpret it. So that was like another little Easter egg. I also forgot, way back at the beginning of the film, while Joe and Ford Brody are looking through their old house, if you notice, there's like a little glass case on the bottom. It says Mothra there, so it's just another little Easter egg there. So anyways, so they try and take the bomb out into the ocean, and Godzilla's trying to take on the Mutos, and the final battle is really awesome, and I'll delve deeper into what I thought about the battle. And basically, long story short, Godzilla saves the day. I mean, that's really it. Godzilla saves the day. He kills both Mutos, and then he allows Aaron Taylor Johnson to go and move the boat away. He gets rescued. The bomb goes off, which there's a little bit of a problem that I have with that, because there's a nuke that just went off, and yet everyone seems to be fine. I don't know. It's kind of weird. And then it's just kind of, you know, yay, Godzilla's won. And like, it's weird because when Godzilla's going back into the bay, there's a little caption on the news that says, "King of the Monsters, Savior of our city." And I'm like, well, if that's how you want to interpret it, because Godzilla don't give a shit. But anyways, he goes into the bay. Classic scene where Godzilla just goes out in the ocean, and right there it ends. Sadly, there's no end credits, but we kind of knew that because, you know, Gareth said that he hated end credit scenes. So that's the story. I hope I summed it up as best as I could, because I know I make mistakes when it comes to... I'm terrible when it comes to talking about stories and movies. And even after I've seen a movie 3 times, I still kind of forget some major plot points. Anyways, so I want to talk about the characters now. This will be a longer review because in this review I wanted to talk about what I thought of the movie just overall, like 100%. I just wanted to really dive into this movie. So the characters of the movie, though, I loved every single character in this film. It's very rare that I like the whole cast. You know, obviously Bryan Cranston's character, #1 character in this movie. He did a fantastic job. The acting was amazing. Once again, I loved Ken Watanabe's acting. He was fantastic. It was kind of funny too, because when he was explaining Godzilla and his origins and stuff like that, he was saying, like, he turned around and he said, like, you know, they said, "We call him Gojira." And it was funny because the audience kind of laughed at that, and I kind of got half angry, but I kind of half understood why, because, you know, it is funny, but then I kind of was mad because I'm like, what's so funny? That's his name in Japanese. You know, I don't know, but so yeah, his acting was great. His assistant, I can't remember her name because I don't know the actor that well, but she was all right. You know, Aaron Taylor Johnson, like I said, I liked his acting. Maybe it's because I liked him in Kick-Ass. I don't know, but I think he did a good job. I think he plays a believable character because he's just a stoic, you know, not every person, you know, in the I mean, he's a military guy, so he's not going to have emotion towards a lot of things. I mean, there are some scenes like when he's talking about his mother's death and stuff and how he sent her down there, you know, he kind of gets tearied up, and but he keeps it in. He's kind of like struggling. It's like, you know, he has a lump in his throat and he's kind of like not trying to, you know, cry and stuff like that. And I thought it was very powerful. I liked his acting. I think he did a really good performance, and for me, that's what made it good for the movie, because we follow him. I mean, this is his movie, so, you know, going through and watching him, I was totally fine with it. I also liked his character when it was in the train sequence in Hawaii, when there was like a little kid that got into the subway, but his parents didn't, and the door shut on him, so he was trying to help the kid, and he said, okay, we'll bring him around, and stuff like that. And I liked how he'd take care of the kid. You know, he gave him like a little soldier from his old house that was in the quarantine zone, and how he just helped the kid, like when the Muto broke the train in half, and like the train was flipping up this way, and he fell, but he grabbed the door, and then like the seat, and all of a sudden the kid was falling down, he grabbed the kid and stuff like that. And I really liked how, you know, he was a hero. I mean, he really was. Let's see, Elizabeth Olsen's character, I liked her, and a lot of people also say they wish they would have seen more of her, but frankly, I think she had enough screen time, because all she did was be a nurse, and frankly, there wasn't anything interesting that you could have done with that character. She was just kind of there as the home base person, but that was it. I didn't really want to see a lot of her, so they did a really good job, you know, in enough screen time with her. The general guy, I don't remember his name again, but he did a fantastic job. He was really into it, very serious, very passionate about his role. I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting anybody. No, I don't think I am. Yeah, so the whole cast I loved. I think the whole cast was just fantastic. Loved them. Yeah, let's see, what else? So the special effects about the film. Oh my god, this movie is like the best looking film I've seen, and I can't wait for it to come out on Blu-ray, because it's going to look even better on my TV. It was really good. I love the effects, and you know, I'm not a big CGI lover. I think CGI, you know, kind of ruins a film, but Gareth Edwards knew that, you know, CGI needs to help the story, not the other way around. It's kind of like a joke with the whole nature has an order, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, but the CGI really worked, and, you know, Godzilla just moved fluidly. Godzilla looked great. The Mutos looked great. They moved fluidly. And I loved it, because when they had the close, not the close shots, but like the kind of, you know, far away shots where you saw Godzilla in his entirety, and he was walking around, they nailed it. They nailed how Godzilla walks, because it kind of reminded me of a guy in a rubber suit. I don't know why. I just think it did, and I loved it. I think it was fantastic. And I loved how there was a lot of practical effects. You could tell when there was an explosion that they could have done in practical, they did it. All the sets that they could do that was practical, they did it. I mean, there was a lot of practical effects, and I loved it. Yeah, so the effects were amazing. The soundtrack to the film, phenomenal. Alexandra Desplat, I think that's how you pronounce it, because I have some people in the comments tell me how to pronounce his name, but the composer, he did a wonderful job, and now that I've heard the soundtrack by itself and also with the movie, I give the soundtrack just a 10 out of 10. It's an A+. I love the soundtrack, because the soundtrack gave character to the movie. It wasn't just this stereotypical action music. Like, I believe Akira Ifukube would be proud of what this music did. Yeah, so it was awesome. Let's see. Okay, now the biggest thing was Godzilla not being in the film enough, or what a lot of people are criticizing about this film. Now, the first time I saw it, you know, once again, I had my beer goggles on, and I was like, okay, this is cool, whatever. Second time I saw it, I understood why Godzilla was not in it, because I remember that this was an older style of filmmaking. It was more like Alien, like Jaws, so it was perfect. I thought, you know, Godzilla had enough screen time, and Godzilla was not in the film for just 15 minutes. Whoever says that is bullshit, because Godzilla is in the film, you know, periodically in the film, and then when it's the final battle, you really get to see Godzilla. But now that I've seen it for a third time, here's where a little bit of my nitpicks come in, and I kind of do wish there was more. When there were two scenes that I wish Godzilla would have been in more. The scene where he first appears in Hawaii, where he does the camera up shot, and then he does his roar, I kind of wish we could have seen a little fight there. I do admit, I wish right there we could have seen that, rather than it cutting to a newscast and we see it on a little screen. I don't know. That part I actually can kind of understand why it pissed a lot of people off. The other scene was when the female Muto was going through Las Vegas. Once again, we see her for a bit, and then they cut to a news thing, and we see it on a little screen. Once again, I wish we would have seen a destruction scene right there. It would have been really awesome to see it. But then again, I realized that, you know, it's the tease effect. It's a movie that loves to tease the characters, and when it gets to the final battle, it's a huge payoff, and I think they did a good job anyways. All right, now I want to talk about the final battle in the film with Godzilla and the two Mutos. I think it was fantastic. It was probably one of the best fights, and it was short but sweet. And there's a lot of Godzilla fights that are short and sweet. And I'd rather want a Godzilla fight that's short and sweet rather than a very long, kind of boring fight. I can say, like, maybe, even though I love Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, that final battle, I think, went on for way too long. It was a little bit too long of a battle where, well, some things weren't really happening. So this final battle in this movie was, I loved it. I think it was great, especially with the effects and just the movement and, oh, I mean, man, Godzilla got tag team, man. I mean, he was like trying to take on the female, and the male just kind of comes up and grabs Godzilla and like throws him against a building. The female runs him into a building, and like they start biting him. They start poking him with their, you know, legs and stuff like that. I mean, it's like, damn, they were messing him up. But then what I loved is that when Godzilla takes on the male Muto for the last time, and the male Muto is coming up behind him, and Godzilla's smart, and he just turns around and smacks his tail, and boom, right into the building, just impales the Muto right there. I thought that was awesome. And then we get the final coup de grace, which I thought was just fantastic, where Godzilla grabs the female Muto, and he turns her around, grabs her mouth, opens her jaw, and at this point I thought Godzilla was going to do a King Kong where he was just going to rip her jaw or something like that, or kind of crack her neck or something like that, but he does the unexpected, unbelievable, grabs her, does his atomic breath down her throat, basically being the kiss of death, and just melting her body from her neck, and it breaks off, and Godzilla just does his roar and just throws her head into the water. It's like, oh, that, I literally lost my shit when that part came up. I in the theater, I was just like, oh my god, because we've never seen Godzilla do that. I mean, I guess the only other time Godzilla's actually like blown up an enemy from the inside was in Godzilla 2000 with Orga. But other than that, that was probably one of the best finishers I've ever seen Godzilla do. Another thing is when Godzilla, when the female Muto was about to attack Aaron Taylor Johnson's character for the first time, and I loved how all of a sudden you see this blue like glow, and everyone in the theater was like, oh, there he goes, and I love, it starts from his tail, and it goes up into his back, and then Godzilla just burls out his chest, and then and just right into the female Muto. It was awesome, I loved it. Now, the beam itself, it's very interesting looking, and I was really worried that it was going to be kind of like this spit napalm look, like it was going to be like very bleh, but it actually was pretty cool, and you could see a little bit of a spiral in there, so they were being traditional with it, but they were also updating it, and I loved it. I think it was fantastic. Alright, what else can I say? The Muto creatures, I love the Muto creatures. I thought they were amazing. I didn't know the female would be huge compared to the male. I mean, that scene where the male is doing the mating call and he goes up and the smoke clears, and all of a sudden the female Muto just like walks out, and you're like, shit, she's big. I was like, holy crap, oh man. And their sound, the roar, oh my god, especially when they're trading the missile, and like it's like that, I don't know how they did that roar, but it was so cool, and the roar is so iconic already, to me at least. I love the roar that the Mutos did. I thought it was awesome. Also, during the final battle, I could have sworn I heard Gigan's roar somewhere. I could have sworn, like, in like a little bit, I heard like a Gigan roar. It was weird. I don't know. Yeah, but the Easter eggs, so the only Easter eggs that I saw were the moth, or the butterfly pictures behind the teacher, and then the Mothra little name on the glass case, with the open egg or whatever, larva egg or thing, and then the dragon looking like face under the water. That was the only Easter eggs I saw, so I might have missed a couple, so put them in the comments if I missed any. Yeah, and so the ending I think was really good. I think they finished it off classic like. I do kind of believe it ended abruptly, but most films of Godzilla do. I mean, usually they have the heroes, you know, the main human characters, you know, say, oh, it's over, blah, 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 and Godzilla goes into the bay and just goes away, and then it just ends to the credits. So I think that was good. So yeah, I think I've covered all I wanted to talk about with this film. So my closing thoughts, basically, this film was phenomenal. It's respectful. It has. I love how Godzilla was an anti-hero because it made it. This was definitely a Heisei styled movie, yet it had the 1954 original all over it with tone-wise, and I think it was a perfect combination. It was serious. It was dark. It was my kind of Godzilla movie, and the design was awesome. Godzilla was badass. The characters were awesome. I loved everything about this film. There were a little bit of nitpicks that I had. A couple other things that little nitpicks would be, I kind of wish that the Toho splash screen would have came on in the intro. I think that would have been a good fan service right there. And also the theme song. I was really disappointed that the theme song was not in the end credits. I think that was a huge missed opportunity. I don't know why they couldn't have put it in there. If they didn't get the rights or something, I don't know. But frankly, I feel because this is more of a Godzilla movie, they should have had at least something with the theme in there. But oh well, maybe we'll get it if there's a sequel. So yeah, now, yeah, like I said, overall, I think it's a great film, and on a scale of like 1 to 5, I give it a 4 out of 5, and on a scale of 1 out of 10, I give it an 8 out of 10, because of the little nitpicks, and because I think Godzilla could have had just a tad bit more screen time, but I do understand why it was teased a lot, and it made the payoff really good. I guess the grade would be like a B. So I'd give it a B. So yeah, but this was a great movie, and I can't wait for future merchandise to come out. Right here's the NECA figure. So I can't wait to get that SH Monstrart figure, and also the Sideshow statue that's coming out. So yeah, but that is my full spoiler review of the film. So I hope I nailed all the points that I wanted to get, or at least remembered from the film. So if I forgot anything or missed any major plot points, tell me in the comments below. But yeah, so that is it, guys. Godzilla 2014 is out. Go see it if you haven't seen it. Support this film. I've seen it 3 times. I might see it again maybe sometime in the future. I'm not sure. But as far as I'm concerned, the King is definitely back, and I am very excited for the future of the Godzilla franchise. So that is it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay big, G fans.